hello, Robert. Thank you very much for
It's my pleasure.
this review. I would like to ask you, are contemporary flute techniques a way to express or shape compositional thought?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. We're always trying to test the limits of what constitutes sonic material from an instrumentalist. And as we, deal with the idiosyncrasies player to player, extended techniques become part of the working language of expressing, musical sound.
Okay. Which composers' works featuring contemporary flute techniques have made the greatest impression on you?
Well, one of my favorite composers is Luciano Berio. So the sequenzas, I really love all the sequenzas, and I think that he does, more than flute, but with any kind of solo instrument, he starts by saying, what are the limits? What are the agreed upon possibilities, and how do I extend from those? And he, is a guy who kind of would reinvent himself for every possibility. So I love the first sequenza. I love, there's a friend of mine who's Polish. His name is Roger Pertulski. But he's an American composer. He's a very good friend of mine, and he wrote some early pieces for flute that had a lot of extended techniques that really charmed me. I love things for wind instruments with electronics too, and processing through electronics. So lots of composers. I'm an admirer of spectral composers like Sariahu. They're not necessarily my bread and butter in terms of taste, but I have a lot of admiration for the kind of extended techniques they do too.
Do you have bibliographies of contemporary flute techniques? If so, which ones?
Not necessarily personal bibliographies. I do a lot of research online, and I look at less sort of notational ideas and less descriptive ideas, but just more watching performers and sort of expressing the sounds that way. Some things, are universal standards at this time, but you can watch a flute player and you can see some expressive technique and, kind of contemplate how that's going to be described on a personal level. So that's usually what I do. If I want an extended technique that involves multiphonics and things like that, I will search out extended performance players and see what their fingerings are. But other than that, I really look to personal performance as to how I'm going to describe it.
Do you create a legend in your works with full descriptions of contemporary techniques?
Sometimes. I find that a lot of people who are willing to play the music I write don't need that as much. And I also, partly because I don't do a whole lot of performances that aren't beyond the personal level, that I'm usually in dialogue with my performers if they're using those kind of extended techniques. I find that if I'm writing, and it's just the state of the art the way it is these days, if I'm writing in a more kind of public venue, I'm going to use only really agreed upon extended techniques where I wouldn't need a legend. If I do use a legend, it's for kind of theatrical things. I like to write pieces of music where the performers aren't just hired musicians, with a blank face, but they're actually actors in a sort of a pantomime. I'm a big fan of George Crumb. If you like George Crumb's works, yeah. And I feel like he was just knocking on the door of this idea that musicians should be actors. They should be playing a part. Right. And so I will use a legend, for that when it requires, gestural movements and things like that.
Which contemporary flute techniques do you like best?
My favorite, sorry if you can hear all those students in the hallway, but my favorite techniques are multiphonics, whether that's producing multiple tones through alternate fingerings or singing and playing. I think those things are I'm a very big fan of the negotiation of multiple sounds when one person has to kind of adapt to them. I think that's a very, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I always think of certain kind of Pentecostal like imagery that's associated with multiple voices coming from one source. And so I try and, those are my favorite kind of things to do. So I like things where flute players sing and play, or maybe sing first and then play, or sing while they're playing an interaction or speaking lines. Those are my favorite things to do.
I have some questions, because now I was writing about the history of extended techniques. And from my life, I know that I think that the genesis of all these techniques is United States.
Yeah.
Because of firstly Edgar Varese, because of Boston, Tanglewood, Zollberger, and New York, because it's very close, Boston to New York, but also San Diego.
That's where I'm from.
And in California, because of Fernie Howe and some percussions group, as I remember that it's nowadays the same, that San Diego is so powerful with extended techniques, contemporary music.
Yeah, Roger Reynolds is a composer long-standing down here in San Diego.
I know him. Yes.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that academia, especially American academia, it really prides itself on evangelizing the avant-garde, and not necessarily, and there's a flip side to that. I think that we could negotiate better between what is new for news sake and what is kind of at the heart of what the humanities have to offer. But I think you're right. I think that it's certainly part of the American paradigm to do something the way nobody else has done it before.
Yes, but it's nice. But look now in 21st century, I think that New York and Boston is not anymore so fan of avant-garde, because I played a lot of works, and for example, from 100 works, we have only 30% with extended techniques.
Yeah.
It means
I think that concert music composition has started to deteriorate because of just the large amount of electronic production. So many academic kind of environments that we counted on to produce these acoustic works are developing degrees in digital music now. And so, the kind of the human element of the performance is starting to slide because of that. So many new students are producing entirely digital works that they stop having personal interactions with their performers and seeing what's possible. And notation is suffering because of that, and also performance practice is suffering because of that.
Yes. But I think that a part of this story with extended techniques, I'm happy that we are in this period of more classical approach to music, neo-romantic, neoclassical, because again, we take care about beauty of sound.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I love about what you're doing with Phasma. I think it's such a extraordinary organization, and the fact that you are really committing yourself to to kind of supporting the endeavors of composers who wouldn't get opportunities otherwise. I had a piece performed in Boston year before last by this group called the Black Sheep Ensemble, and they were really similar about that. They didn't have your scope and certainly your volume of participants, but they're really trying to engage with new works and commissioning new ideas because they don't want to see it fall away.
Let's go.
Robert, thank you very much for our short interview.
Pleasure's all mine.
And I hope to perform in near future your works for flute solo. I found
that'd be wonderful.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
Anytime. If there's anything else you need, you just email me.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.